Hey, what's up there, party people? J.R. Everhart here, your friendly neighborhood grumpy sound guy. So this week we're going to kind of freestyle some info that I think a whole bunch of people have been asking for. In fact, I know a whole bunch of people have been asking for because they've been blowing me up about it. The shop's a freaking wreck right now. We had a festival over the weekend that was all rain, and boy, we just love that. So we got cables laying out everywhere, drying out and all that kind of stuff. We got all the lighting gear over there, and there's another B-rig hiding behind the movers. But yeah, so we're a little bit in chaos here, hence the selfie stick instead of the stationary camera setup. But today we're going to talk about how to make your band sound good on a small system, on a small sound system. How to make your band sound good on a stick rig, maybe a little QSC powered rig with single 18 subs or something like that, a turbo sound. I kind of like the IQ turbo stuff a little better than the K-Series QSC, but that's up for argument, and a whole bunch of people are going to blow up my comments saying that one is better than the other, but whatever. And there's other stuff. JBL has the PRX line isn't hateful. It's decent for what you're trying to do and what you're trying to get people to do, with the rigs. But before we dive into all that, I am going to continue to hound on you guys to please subscribe to this channel. So if you like this content, you find value in this content, keep it free. All you got to do is hit that subscribe button. That supports me, that supports this channel, it supports this kind of content and all of my other partners that I have in the business, where we're all trying to just help each other out as we try to make the world a better place, one gig at a time, one mix at a time, all that kind of jazz. So, moving right along, I probably get, I don't even know, dozens of messages a month, from guys that are like, hey man, we can't afford to hire a sound guy. So, how can we sound good on our existing gear? Maybe they're just using some old school, powered head of some kind, like maybe a PV, powered head, or a, one of the Mackeys. I think Yamaha probably makes the best little powered head with that EMX line stuff or whatever. Just a lot of power, a lot of bang for your buck. And passive speakers are easier to hook up because you only run one cable to the speaker. And if you're just running a pair of speakers on sticks and you're playing in little small sports pubs and stuff like that, and you don't need subs, maybe you're an acoustic duo, or maybe you're just a little three-piece with a loud drummer. I played in a band years ago like that, and we had absolutely no problem. Nobody ever complained about the kick not knocking them in the chest. They could hear the kick. It was still musical. It's still acoustic music, at that point. So you are getting the point across. So maybe you're coming from that perspective, or maybe you have a full-on powered active rig. Maybe you have single 18s and a 12 and a horn in your top box, or a 15 and a horn in your top box. Whichever flavor you like better. I tend to like the 12s because I think it reproduces vocal a little better. That's just my personal opinion. A lot of guys like the 15s because they always talk about how it makes the low mid a little fatter and that sort of thing. When you're talking about this scenario that we're talking about today, where you're in a small club and you're just trying to do minimal sound reinforcement because the room is so small, you can do a whole bunch of stuff just right from the stage. So if I was walking into a club, let's say that's going to pack out at like 75 or 100 people. It's your local sports pub. They have, acoustic duos and trios, or full band trios. Maybe a four-piece might fit in there if they're super tight and compact. And let's face it, a lot of you guys can't afford to hire a sound guy. So you have your own rig and your own thing, and you just got to kind of figure it out on your own because the budgets aren't there. This is more of a hobby thing. I'm really talking to the middle to lower B-class bands and probably all of the C-class bands, because if you don't have a budget, unless you got a doctor or a dentist in the band, and I know some of those too, you're really operating on minimum budget, to try to get the job done and have a good time, while you're doing what you do. So in that scenario, and I get called out to those kind of gigs a lot of times in the wintertime, when I'm slow and my calendar's a little looser, you know, and I have friends in the business that follow the channel, they support the Grumpy Sound Guy movement, and they're people who just genuinely love the content. You know, when you're one of those cats, you get a little bit more leniency from me because, you know, I support those that support me, you know. So I've got some guys that are animal circuit bands that are maybe, you know, playing through a PV powered head, and they're just kind of daisy chaining everything else together. Don't even start that conversation about how that shouldn't happen, but they do it anyways. And believe it or not, it's okay. It's not bad. And they call me out once a year to kind of reset their little powered head, and then they can put a cover on it so no one can mess with the controls outside of just the volume on each channel. And they leave the EQs alone, and that works for them, you know. And that band is probably doing, man, they're probably doing 100 dates a year. You know, they're probably making as much as most middle of the road B bands. And they understand where they are, they understand who they are, they don't have much of an ego, and they're just trying to have a good time. And it's a part-time gig for them for the most part, and they're just making the best of it, you know. I love those kind of bands, man. I have a real special place in my heart for those kind of bands because, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. I mean, we focus so much on, you know, the upper B bands and the A bands and the guys that are playing all the A rooms and, you know, making big money and all that kind of stuff. Let's not forget that the predominant, you know, market are the, you know, middle of the road B bands, you know, and a lot of those guys are playing the animal clubs because sometimes the animal clubs have more of a budget than a regular nightclub. I know that sounds crazy, but here's the difference. You know, if you have an animal club that puts 300 people into place, they're typically member-driven lodges and that sort of thing. And their people come and they're ready to spend money, you know. So even with the reduced rates of pricing and stuff, those animal clubs are killing, man, and they're making money, you know, and that gives them a little bit more of a budget for bands. So there's no shame in that. I know a lot of people look down on bands that play animal clubs. I know bands that are just banking hard in animal clubs. I mean, upper B bands that have a reputation in that circuit. And dude, I know some A bands that ain't making what they're making, you know? I mean, it is what it is. Now, every state, every municipality is different when it comes to those animal circuit bands. In my local area here, it's not super crazy good, but if you just go like 30 miles north into Pennsylvania, dude, it's a whole different animal up there, no pun intended. I mean, those clubs up there, the animal clubs like, you know, the Eagles, the Elks, the Moose, AmVets, you know, VFWs, all those kind of clubs up there are really the only clubs to go to because there's not a huge population of support for like quote unquote dance clubs. So that demographic is like 35 to 55, maybe even 60, you know, in those areas. And those people come out religiously every Friday and Saturday night, and they support live music, and those clubs have budgets. You know, I went to work for a band probably 10 years ago or close to it that had a whole bunch of those on their calendar. And I was like, really, dude? We're going to play the Moose in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania? Until we went and played the Moose in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And that place had 700 people in there. And I mean, it was people who came ready to party and have a good time. And I can't hate on that, man. You got to give credit where credit's due. And that's the middle market. The middle market is so versatile, man. And there's so many different venues that work in so many different areas. And everybody's municipality and everybody's area is different. So I just said all that to say, before you get on your high horse about animal clubs, you might want to think about that because sometimes it can be where the money's at. But some of these bands that we're addressing in today's video that don't have money for a sound guy and they just need to, you know, get their little rig out there and get it working good and giving the house the best mix they can get. Let's just get into some nuts and bolts of that. So when I'm mixing in that environment, even if I'm iPad mixing like on an X32 rack or something like that, that little 16 input thing, or a touch mix, or you know, any of that kind of stuff, a Soundcraft UI, which I'm a big fan of. I really like the Soundcraft UI. I like the X32 rack better because I just like that XM format a little bit better. I think it's a little more user friendly, but you can't deny the fact that the UI has some killer, you know, dynamics in them. The compressors and EQs are all DBX. The reverb is Lexicon. I think the reverb is better in the UI than what is in even the M32. But I think the delay in the M32 is better than the delay that's in the UI, because for whatever reason, the UI does not do delay well. So any of those little mixers, those little Wi-Fi mixers, or like I said, if they're using some kind of powered passive mixer or something, the way I address a band in a small room like that is I only put in the sound system things that have to be in the sound system. And I just use my ears. So if the guitar player is playing through, an amp on stage, bass player has an amp on stage, you got a keyboard player in the band, and let's say 3 vocals across the front and a 5-piece drum kit. So I would address that in sound check as I would probably just mic the kick. That's probably the only thing I would put on the drums. Obviously the vocals, obviously the keyboard, because those are all direct input instruments, per se. And would probably let the guitar and the bass kind of just fly. Now, I've been in situations where the players weren't comfortable with that, so I might put a mic up on the guitar and I might run a line for the bass, but it's never going to make it to front of house because I have to mix around what is going on. Now, if you have a super loud drummer, that's going to cause you problems, and you're probably going to have to bring those things up in the mix. And you're going to end up with a 100, 105 dB mix out front in a small club. Everybody's going to complain. You're going to have that to deal with. But the whole idea behind mixing on small systems is to keep it simple. Keep it super simple. Don't overdo everything. And the problem with some of these digital mixers that I run into, especially with novice guys that are just trying to figure this out by watching YouTube videos and stuff, is just because you have gates and compressors and 31 band EQs on everything doesn't mean you need to use all that stuff, or you have 4 different effects engines and you want to use all 4 on the vocal, lead and stuff like that. You don't have to do all that, keep it simple. I would probably compress and gate the kick drum a little bit, definitely do some EQing on the kick drum, because those are just things I do to kick drum. If you got subs that can reproduce it, because that's the other side of the conversation, you got to have a system that can reproduce what your expectations are. And if your expectations are, double 18, passive 18s that are going to give you 140 dB a kick, you're not going to get that out of, a pair of KS118, USC single 18 subs. So you got to keep that stuff in context. You know what I'm saying? So when I'm mixing, I just try to keep it simple. I try to mix around the loudest guy on stage, whoever that is. Sometimes it's a guitar player. Most of the time it's the guitar player. Sometimes it's the drummer. If I only have the kick mic'd, well, it kind of is what it is, and we're going to make the best of it. I always make sure vocals are on top of the mix, especially the lead vocal. Layer backing vocals just a hair under that. If you have multiple guys that sing lead on different songs, well, that's going to have to change from song to song. Somebody's going to have to manhandle that. But, this is a scenario where you can afford to probably pay somebody, some kid from your church that's a quasi-tech guy, or somebody right out of school who's just looking to have some dates to fill in his calendar. You can probably pay them, $75 or $100 a night just to come out and watch levels. They're not going to set the world on fire, with, some mix that's going to blow your mind, but they will be able to manage levels out front. And it gives you a set of, sub-trained ear, out in the audience to hear what your band sounds like and give you a little bit of honest feedback that way. All the vocal channels, I will roll off everything up to about 150 hertz. And a lot of guys are going to scream when they hear that, because they're like, oh my gosh, you're killing so much body and depth of the vocal and, this, that, and the other. Look, I ain't saying I would do that in a studio. We're talking about a live setting in a high volume situation, probably in a small room. Okay. And if you have wedge monitors, now that's a whole nother video we'd have to do about that. But the reality of this is you want to get all that low end stuff out of the way. There's nothing musical vocally under 150 hertz. By itself, when you're doing sound check, yeah, it might sound a little thin, but when the whole band gets going and you get that kick drum and bass guitar filling out the bottom end, you're making room in the bandwidth for everything. Let me say that again. You're making the room in the bandwidth for everything. So the kick is at 50 and the attack is like, 3.5 on the EQ. The bass guitar's, low end meat is going to be around 100 to 150 hertz. You're making room. You don't have the bass guitar and the kick fighting for that same 50 hertz. You got to EQ from that mindset, so you're making room inside the mix for the instruments you're trying to mix. I will also usually duck out like 315, depending on the system, depending on how the room sounds on the vocal channel. maybe even 2 or 2.5, maybe 1.6. Those can sometimes be problem frequencies in small rooms. I duck them out a lot on, or cut them. I'm saying ducking, but that's kind of a compression thing. I'll cut them things down, maybe -4 or 6 dB or something like that. I just let my ears do the moving here. A lot of guys miss that. They get stuck in all the rules of mixing, and they read too many forums of guys who aren't really out in the field doing it full time. They're just novice guys, and church guys are horrible for that. I know so many IT guys that call themselves church sound engineers that really couldn't hear 2.5 if you put it in a 5-gallon bucket and handed it to them. Take all that stuff with a grain of salt. Let your ears tell you what's going on. You don't always have to follow the gain structure rules to get where you want to go. Just make sure you get where you want to go. That's really the bottom line there. So I'm just going to keep it simple. You know what I mean? I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to mix around the loudest guy in the band. I'm going to try to create a comfortable vibe in the room. I'm going to try to fill out the mix with some low end if that's possible. If it's not possible, well, then don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If you're running a kick mic through just a pair of tops, okay, give it like some 60 or 65 hertz. Most tops can reproduce that. And let it go, man. Don't try to pound your chest with it or knock the room over with kick. Just put a little bit in there. You can always get the attack at 3.5 or 4K or 3K, depending on how the kick is tuned and what mic you're using and that sort of thing. You can always get that in the system a little bit, There's things you can do. Be smart, Be smart about how you're doing things. I only gate drums. I don't gate anything else in the mix. I would compress vocals. In an X32, I'd probably do 7-to-1 on the vocal channel and would get the thing. I always do the output makeup gain at 4, I think, is what it is. It might be plus or minus 4. I forget how it's gauged out on the knob. But I turn it up till we get to 4. I think it's plus 4. And then I compress to where I'm hitting 3 or 4. While the vocals are going, I'm looking at that compressor and I'm adjusting the threshold up and down until I get to where I'm compressing that 3 or 4 dB. If you have a vocal group, I usually compress at that vocal group at 4-to-1, ratio with no makeup gain, and then just get 2 or 3, dB of compression, just kind of, mellow out the peaks a little bit. I don't over compress on a small system. And then left, right, out, I'll do 2-to-1 and do the same thing. 2, 3, maybe 4 dB of compression. That keeps the music dynamic. It doesn't make it feel mechanical or anything like that. Keep all your EQing pretty simple, like I said, with vocals. And then keyboards, I typically don't EQ anything in keyboards unless there's some weird bottom end left-handed stuff going on. Like if they're getting away with the bass guitar, I might roll up that high pass filter to 120 or 150 hertz or something like that to get it out of the way of the bass guitar. The meat of a keyboard is usually around 1K to 2K, somewhere around maybe 800, in that ballpark. Depends on the sound they're using on the keyboard. And, keyboard players, level out all your patches. Do that acoustically. Set it up with a powered speaker and put a little, free SPL, volume meter app on your phone. Set it in front of the speaker and go through all your patches. Don't go by the numbers in your patch, because a horn sound that is at 8 in volume is going to naturally, because of the frequency response of horns, is going to naturally be louder than an electric piano sound at that same volume level. That's why it's important to get a dB meter in front of a speaker and go through your patches that way and adjust them to try to get them all in the same ballpark. So then whoever's running sound doesn't have to chase you around all night. He can focus on vocals, and that sort of thing. So small systems is where it's at, man, for a lot of bands. A lot of bands are doing their own sound. They're trying to do the best they can do. They're on a budget, man. I got no hate to you guys. I love you guys. I'm glad you guys are out there doing what you're doing, because every band that's playing out every weekend is helping the scene as a whole. So before I let you go, I want to give a plug to my boys here from Eyes of the Nile. These guys are an Iron Maiden tribute band. Super cool Iron Maiden tribute band. And look, it ain't very often you're going to hear me give these kind of endorsements, because I'm a hard ass when it comes to music. I'm a musician myself. I'm an Iron Maiden fan. I've seen Maiden several times in concert, and I'm telling you right now, these guys are a close second to the real deal, man. You really are not going to get a better more well presented, well rounded musically, and energy level through the friggin' roof tribute band than what these guys are. You know, they're out of Northern Virginia. I'm sure they'll come to your town. If you got the money, they will always have the time. And you never know, you might get the old Grumster with them, because I do mix them from time to time. But give those guys a check out on Facebook and social media. I will link their stuff in the bio so you can check them out. I just love those guys to death. They're a lot of fun to work with. Some of those cats are real close personal friends of mine, and I always try to support those that support me. And those guys definitely love the content that we put up, and they support the Grumpy Sound Guy, and they throw me business. We actually make money together, which is always super cool. I like making money. So, yeah, guys, that's it. Subscribe, like, follow, share, all the stuff that you're supposed to be doing that costs absolutely nothing. Just take 2 seconds of your time and hit that subscribe button. And if you like this content, shoot me something in the comment section and tell me about your system. Tell me about your little stick rig. Tell me about your experience with animal clubs. Tell me about what the budgets are like in your area. Maybe your animal clubs are paying more than the animal clubs in our area. I know the predominant amount of people who follow me on YouTube are from Texas. Yeah, from out the Mid-Atlantic, where I'm from. It's from Texas. So, hey, man, I haven't been to Dallas in a hot minute. So kind of let me know what's going on out that way, guys, and tell me what the market's like out there and how this content helped you and how this content gave you some clarity on how to use your rig more effectively in the rooms that you use it in. I'll see you next week.